Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of The Truth is Barrel Proof. I'm Jack Bigadoo, also known as the Hood Sommelier, and today we are going to try something new, interesting, woman owned from Scotland, and making a buzz in the market right now. A lot of people are talking about it. Is creating a little bit of wave in, and I want to be one of the first to talk to the people behind the brand. Why? When you know who you're buying from, when you know the story behind a product, is more compelling to really understand how the product came about and what are the things that makes this product special, not necessarily the price, not necessarily all the fancy things that go around product, but who, how, and hopefully where is here on the Truth is Barrel Proof. Ladies and gentlemen, her name is Annabelle, and she is the person behind, and I'm trying to say this the right way I can, Nc'Nean, but I will let her actually tell us how it is. Nc'Nean, I try to practice. The only reason why I wanted to have her on the show as I bring her in is when I seen the post the first time on this bottle come through my Instagram. The first comment I made is, what in the heck is organic scotch? And today, I want to have that answer. So please welcome Annabelle. Annabelle, welcome to
Hi,
my
Jack.
hood. Hello, hello, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. For
Thanks for
all of you
having me.
guys, for all of you guys who don't know, Annabelle is obviously in Scotland, and right now she should be in bed, but she's recording with me here. Uh, and she wanted to give us a gracious 45 minutes of her time so I can get my crazy answer of what in the heck is organic single malt. But before that, Miss Annabelle, please introduce yourself to the folks. Who are you and what do you do for a living?
Well, I am Annabelle and I'm the founder of Nc'Nean. You said it perfectly, so well done.
Nickname.
Um,
Yeah.
I run the company. A long time ago, I used to be a strategy consultant, so kind of a city corporate job, and I left that 11 years ago to start working on this project, and I'm still here today. So it's
Hey,
been a journey.
shout out to entrepreneurship. I love an entrepreneurial mind. But why single malt? That's really my question. Why single malt? I want to know that. Why single malt?
Well, I guess there's a few important kind of bits of the backstory to understand. The first is the distillery is on my parents' farm, and that is right up on the west coast of Scotland. Um, you can't really be on the west coast of Scotland and not think about whiskey. It's like it's in the air. And that was the very original inspiration. But I really wanted to make a single malt that was super sustainable, modern, and could maybe bring a bit of a different perspective to what is quite a traditional market. And that, I guess, was really my inspiration beyond the kind of inspiration of the place.
Okay, let me caveat that. Distilleries on your parent farm, or your parent farmers or distillers?
Well, possibly technically both and neither, depending on your definition. Um, so they own the farm, they don't farm it, they have someone farm it
Okay.
for them. They're in their late 70s.
Oh,
Um, and they also only came to it 20 years ago. So this isn't this, they bought it 20 years ago. So this is a relatively recent thing for them.
yeah.
Um, they're also, my dad's quite involved in the distillery, but neither of us actually distill,
Okay.
turn the steam on, open the valves, close the valves. Um,
So yourself, your background have, you are not in there shoveling the barley, malting it, and putting. So pretty much, you do have employees and a team that are
Yes.
distilling. Now,
From
go
the
ahead.
beginning, we've had
From the beginning. Okay.
a team of 5, including a very experienced distillery manager who has really trained all of our team.
So you have a head distiller that takes care of your distilling. Now let's talk about you coming into distilling. The little I know, if I'm gonna come on my brand on the market today, question is gonna be, what specs did you have in mind you wanted your whiskey to taste like, right? Or to come out as, knowing that Scotland have so many variation of how they make it whiskey. So I want you to run me through the specs in the sense of type of grain you actually thought about having, type of, type of distilling you wanted to have based on viscosity and how you wanted to cut it maybe, and then maybe type of maturation you thought will be perfect for it. And
Okay.
that's the gist of my question.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll start with the end goal and then we can talk about how we get there. So
Yeah.
I wanted to create something in its simplest possible terms that I would describe as light and fruity. That
Okay.
was the flavor profile that I was going for. In an ideal world, I also wanted to create something with quite a lot of texture. And the reason I wanted that is not only because I think that is delicious when drunk neat, but it also means that if you, for example, mix it with soda water, tends to make an excellent highball because it can stand up to that dilution. So that was the kind of goal. How we got there, starting with the grain, we wanted to make single malt whiskey rather than a blended or a single grain whiskey, which means we're restricted to barley. So that was kind of, it's 100% barley. I really wanted it to be Scottish barley, which is not necessarily a given in Scotch, surprisingly enough.
Mhm.
And I really wanted it to be organic. And the primary reason I wanted it to be organic barley is so that the kind of ecosystems on the farms were taken care of. We don't grow the barley ourselves. We have sheep and cattle rather than grains. But I think organic farming is amazing for the ecosystems of the farms where our barley does come from. However, it also plays an amazing role in creating that texture. So that wasn't actually a conscious decision up front. I didn't really know that those organic grains would create lovely texture, but it's kind of a bonus, if you like.
Mhm.
So that's the grain. And then in terms of our distilling process, we've always been super focused on the spirit rather than the maturation. And I partly just because I find it fascinating, fun, interesting. There's been a lot of work done on maturation and casks in Scotch, and the spirit is what I love. And there's lots of little kind of technical bits all through that process that we focus on. So we let the mash rest for an hour, which is for flavor development. We have pretty long fermentations of up to 114 hours, which for Scotch is super long. We use 2 yeasts in that fermentation again, which is for kind of flavor development and creating a broader range of flavors.
Are those proprietary yeast or
They are not.
okay.
That is an aspiration, which we haven't got to yet.
As you can see, I ask a lot of questions because obviously I've dealt with a lot of distillers and master distillers. So I like those nuances to know that, hey, if it's a proprietary yeast, I tell clients, I tell my listeners and followers, if
Yeah.
somebody has a proprietary yeast, consistency is going to be a big deal because obviously they know exactly what they're making every single time.
Yeah.
So I love that is an aspiration. But
Exactly. Well, we also do, we can maybe come back to this, but we run yeast experiments every year. So
okay.
those 2 yeasts are our kind of core ones that we use for most of our products, but we also play around with other yeast, which is super fun. But I'll come back to that. And then in distillation, we distill really slowly. We have lantern shaped stills, so lots of copper contact, and we have relatively high cut points. So that captures lots of the higher alcohols, so the fruity flavors, and also creates quite a light spirit, all with the aim that I want our new make spirits and the spirits straight off the stills to be delicious as it is. So that's the spirit side. And then in maturation, in any one bottle of Nc'Nean, you're going to find 3 cask types. So the first one, there you go. So really beautiful shape stills, but also, you know, that copper contact is really important for the spirit. So barrel wise, we have in any one bottle, you're going to find 55% shaved, toasted, and recharred red wine casks,
Okay.
43% ex bourbon casks, and 2% Oloroso sherry butts. And all of those cask types play a different role in creating the final flavor profile. The STR red wine and the bourbon are quite different when you taste them separately.
Correct.
STR is like a super. Go on.
But why particularly did you choose that? Because a lot of folks will choose, you know, um, it seems particular unless I'm reading it completely wrong, but your majority is coming from wine, which is, you know, makes you obviously different, but most people majority come from ex-bourbon cask, and then the wine come in a little more of a slower
Exactly.
portion of it. So what was it purposeful?
Yeah, it was very purposeful. Those STR red wine casks have a really amazing impact on the spirit. They bring a lot of body and flavor, and in particular they kind of accentuate the fruity elements of the spirit whilst also bringing some kind of spice, which is quite a nice contrast and rounds out the spirit. But I think 100% STR red wine casks I love on occasion, but as a pure spirit can be a bit one-dimensional, and adding in the bourbon in almost equal proportions. You know, the bourbon is much lighter. It does let the spirit shine through more. It brings that sweetness and the vanilla profile. And so those two are like a yin and a yang, but they work together really well to make almost more than the sum of the parts. And then the 2% sherry is like salt and pepper. It's just seasoning. You're not going to taste any sherry per se, but it does add this depth. And I should say that the shave, toast, and recharring process that we do to the red wine casks before we use them, a lot of people associate red wine casks and whiskey with that kind of red color, but also the tannins and all those sorts of flavors that you get through, which can be amazing. But basically the charring process that ours go through before we fill them kind of takes away all of that. It caramelizes the red wine sugars, and it's effectively a charred cask with some of those residual red wine sugars. So
Makes sense. Completely makes sense. Now, I see that you're approaching this thing the way I describe most flavor profile, which is more artistically. I see more as a putting a symphony together, right? And
yeah.
the music kind of works. Now, through that process, what's the average age that we're looking at? Obviously, there's no age statement on, Nc'Nean's bottle. So
Yeah.
what average are we sitting in between those casks that you cited?
Well, we started production in 2017. So very shortly we will have our 7th birthday. So we will have had 7 years of distillation. In any one bottle at the moment, you're likely to have a mix of 4, 5, and 6-year-old casks. In each batch, that will vary a bit. We definitely blend for flavor rather than for age. They'll also start to become some 7-year-olds shortly, but we'll also probably start to add in some of the good 3-year-olds. So it will depend a little bit by batch. Sadly, the Scotch whisky regulations don't allow us to legally disclose what is in each batch, which is a bit rubbish, but hey ho. So yeah, it's probably an average of 4 or 5, depending on the actual batch you have in your hand.
So I have batch KS17. What does that mean?
Well,
so maybe explain the process, because if somebody else buy a different batch or is viewing this on YouTube or somewhere, they're like,
yeah,
oh, my batch look different than what you
yeah,
guys talked about. So what is
exactly.
what is the KS 17
Yeah.
means?
Well, I have exactly the same one here. So the batch code is on the back of every neck label, and it is all about providing transparency. So our batches should be consistent. They are consistent in terms of the cask types. They're roughly consistent in terms of age, but with some variation. But it is, if Matt, who's our blender, is doing his job properly, the flavor profile is consistent. The reason we put the batch codes on there is because we want to be as transparent as possible, and people like to know, oh, this batch was blended on this date and it was bottled on this date, and we give all the details about the yeast used and so on and so forth. If we could do, we would also tell you all the details about every cask in there. Now we can't give that, but we'll give the details about the younger cask that we are allowed to share. And yeah, it's really just about transparency. It's not like batch K17 is going to be any better or worse than RA08 that came before or after it. It's just a way of
I was just asking.
No, it's good. I mean, this is the reason we put it on there. And I think
of course, because I know some people that are very particular about certain type of batches, especially when it comes to batches, and especially in other spirits where batches can differ from each one. When it comes to the whiskey industry, sometimes I feel like it's like Pokemon. People hunt for specific type of batches because that was the one that they like, and if that falls on the profile, so at least that the batches are consistent, because one batch could be off, and next thing you know, you're like, well, I like K better than this one. So it's always good to know. Now let's talk about. I don't want to sound misogynist here, but I want to talk about a woman's touch. And while talking about a woman's touch, I want folks to actually look up Nc'Nean and tell me if I'm crazy that this is not the best looking bottle in the industry. It is. When I talk about a woman's touch, is yes, anybody could have came with this, but the bottle is, in all honesty, attractive. That's the best way for me to put it. It's attractive. It draws you in because of how it looks, the flowers coming up, and which I want to know more about. How did the design of this bottle came
about? Well, it was, as with many designs, an evolution. I think anyone who tells you they just woke up in the morning and got to a design is not telling the truth.
Yeah.
We actually we started working on the brand back in 2017 when the distillery was up and running. And we actually had an artist, we didn't know what we were going to do with the drawings at the time. We had an artist come and draw lots of the local plants around the distillery.
Okay.
And we used them on our website, and we used them on various things. And then, of course, roll forward to 3 years, and we're thinking about launching the whiskey, and we're starting the bottle design process.
Correct.
And we went through lots of iterations, and I just wanted something that was beautiful, but also represented kind of what we're trying to do from a sustainability point of view. And I think that, so we had an illustrator illustrate lots of the local plants around us, really to reflect the kind of beautiful, supernatural habitat that the distillery's in, and also kind of allude visually to our focus on sustainability, but not necessarily knowing what we were going to do with these illustrations. And fast forward 3 years, we start thinking about bottling. We find the lovely bottle shape.
Let me show this shape, because oh my God, am I in love with the shape, or am I in love with the shape?
And
look at that. It's so easy to carry around.
Yeah,
it is. And like I said, everything about this bottle seems intentional.
Well, we were very lucky to find this amazing manufacturer who had just launched in late 2019 a range of 100% recycled glass bottles. So most glass that whiskey's in is made a lot of virgin materials, not recycled materials. And honestly, they only had 3 shapes. And sometimes I think less choice is better.
Yes.
So we just looked at the 3 instead of the 1 billion that are out there in non-recycled glass. And I was like, that's the one that has character. I felt really drawn to it. And so that's what we started working on. And I mean, we went through loads of designs, but I just felt like this one really reflected what we were. I thought it was beautiful. I think
It is beautiful. It is light. It is easy to carry. You don't even have to talk about it. I'm talking about as a consumer. It will look good on the bar. It's manual. It's easy to just store around,
yeah,
and I love everything about this design, and that's why I started with a woman touch. I seem like it's sophisticated, but yet it is approachable. It is soft in its own way, but at the same time it's tenacious, and he has a certain oomph about it, but yet it's still have it is curvy, and I love curves on bottles. So it's one of those things that the the whiskey lover in me, I mean, I ask people all the time, how many bottle can you keep after you're done drinking the whiskey, right? That's a real question. How many bottle can you keep after you drink the whiskey? And I'm telling you, this is a keeper. This is one that you can redecorate, put some lights in, do whatever it is that need done for you to actually have, whatever it is that need to be going in there. So I am excited. It come
we
at
do.
46% ABV, right?
Yeah, we do have people complaining that they don't want to throw the bottle away, but they've already made their previous bottles into olive oil pourers, lamps, candles, and
Correct.
they don't know what to do with the next one.
Correct. I'm telling you, is it's probably one of the most beautiful bottles in the industry. I love it. It's a beautiful bottle in the industry. Now, we've talked about everything that makes this whiskey. We talked about every part of this whiskey, from type of grain to maturation to how the idea came about. But the real litmus test
Is the
is
taste.
is the taste. Are you full of it, or are you really bringing something different on the market? This is the
Okay.
time we need to know. Moment of truth. And I opened this, and immediately, for people that are listening, I just opened this immediately. A burst of flowers. It's a burst of fruitiness. That's the first thing that happened when I opened this whiskey immediately. Just a burst of fruitiness. And it is caramel apple and almond paste. Yeah, I'm not gonna say marzipan because it's pretentious. So I'm not gonna say
I love it.
marzipan because it's pretentious. So I'm gonna say caramel apple, a citrus zest, and almond butter. That's what I'll say. In almond
Yeah,
butter.
I love it.
That will be my description of the nose. The nose is fruity, is attractive, is rounded, is a little bit of floralness there that you don't know, but it's citrusy. Um, some stone fruit coming through, but still light. For me, it remind me of a spritz of lemon zest, like a spritz on
Yeah,
top, on top. Slancha.
slungy. I'm loving this excuse for a whiskey, by the way, at 11:30 on a Wednesday. Thanks. Mm.
Okay. Okay. You know the craziest thing? People always ask me, what is the barometer, right? The barometer that I use to know if I like a whiskey.
Yeah,
And
big question.
honestly, the barometer that I use if I like a whiskey at the first taste is if the first thing that click in my head is, I wonder what this tastes like at cask strength.
Mm,
If the first thing that goes through my head is, these flavors are so intense, I wonder what this tastes like at cask strength, that means the whiskey is good. I don't know why. That's the only way. And people always ask me the same, like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no. People be like, oh yeah, I think more about this flavor. And I'm like, none of the flavor note matters to me at all. That would be second, third, and fourth seat. But the first sip, if it hits my tongue, and the first thing that goes through my brain is, I wonder what this tastes like at cast strength. That's it.
I
Oh,
love that as a measure.
I'm
I'm going to adopt
automatic.
it.
And you know what? You are onto something here, Annabelle. It is interesting for someone to make a whiskey that is easy to drink in a beautiful bottle, but does not have a background at all in making the whiskey. You must be a really tough boss. There must be some some serious specification you're looking for when you're making this whiskey, because this whiskey look, taste, and look in every way from the making to here to specification. Almost like you wanted your guests, like coming to your house, like I want my guests to feel this way when they walk into my house. It's almost like I want everybody to feel this way when they're drinking my whiskey. And that was my first original question. What was the thinking behind the whiskey? And I can sit here. You know what we will call this, the gossip whiskey. Okay, you sit here and gossip and drink this whiskey because you can make up so many stories. Say she thought about some elves around, around around all the forest, and this beautiful flower produced by magic, and this water, this elixir water that she put in this bottle that turned into, you know a pixie juice. That's the best way to put it. And yeah, one interesting thing, it seemed when was your first production out, like first product came on the market?
August 2020. So right in the middle of the pandemic, which was interesting timing, although in retrospect, not terrible, although it felt fairly terrible in early 2020. But as we know, actually, there was, you could kind of, people were sitting online and really interested in alcohol. So it wasn't a
Correct.
bad time, actually, eventually, to get our message out there, even if it was not really what I'd dreamed of over the past 7 years of building the business. But, you have to adapt.
So that came on the market, and you now just found yourself in the US market. You tell me a little bit about your US store. You just did it about a week ago, I believe, a week or two ago, you were in the US.
Exactly. I was. So I was
Tell,
in New
tell,
York.
tell me about your US tour. Your now
Um,
a luncheon of your product in US and Canada. Um,
exactly.
I wanna hear about your US tour, and tell me the one thing in the US that made you go. Was it your first time?
It wasn't my first time in the US. It wasn't actually even my first time in the US with Nc'Nean. It was our kind of formal launch in New York
Okay.
because, I mean, the US is not one place, right? It's many states. And
Hmm.
I was in Chicago in late October because the product was already there then. But this was our
Okay.
kind of, we're now in 22 states, and it felt like we were in enough of the US to say we've launched.
No, no, that 22 states is a lot.
Yeah, it's great. And we're with, so Impex is our national importer, who are
Yeah.
fantastic. They've got an amazing range of
Sam,
whiskies.
Sam is the best thing that could have happened to whiskey in years.
Exactly, exactly. So we're really lucky to be part of that portfolio. And as is kind of normal, they are rolling us out across various state distributors. But yeah, I had a super week in New York. It was, yeah, just, I mean, it's a great place. The bars are amazing. The whiskey bars in particular, I just found mind blowing. Um, a really amazing reception, a couple of whiskey clubs, and Women Who Whiskey event, and it was, yeah, it was an awesome week.
I For all the people that are wondering, oh my God, what is this amazing whiskey? I will tell you right now. Now, you have to understand this whiskey is, you guys are, I will not consider big right now. You guys are still small and
Oh,
still.
definitely.
So when you buy in a bottle of this whiskey, you really are supporting the brand. They're not majorly making it. There is attention to details. You get a new decoration bottle out of it. But this is a this is a $70 whiskey, 69.99, depending on your market. You between 69.99 and 89.99, depending on your market. But I tell you what, is one of those whiskeys that I can totally tell you, Annabelle has a future in the industry. When you taste somebody whiskey for the first time, you can tell if they're, and excuse my French here, but if they're full of shit, you would know. And I feel like if they're just making whiskey to for the masses, you will know. But to have a whiskey and a scotch specifically that you can enjoy and also save the planet at the same time, obviously, but that you can enjoy specifically, there's a reason why I'm calling it the gossip whiskey, because I feel like I can just pour this whiskey and call a friend and say, "Did you hear what happened to Peter in the neighborhood? You haven't? Let me pour you some McNean. Let's talk about this." And that's how I feel. One other remark I will make is the world of whiskey need more women. They do. The misogyny, the old white men with the beard. Diversity is needed in the world of whiskey. So when pioneers like Rachel Berry are doing things out there, when you see someone like Annabelle walking in, I think it's only fair that we welcome her with open hand, that we support McNean as a brand that is coming in. Not a lot of women in the world, I can count how many women in the world own a brand, and like own the brand. We're not talking about just blending one or working besides another man. Own a brand. There's not a lot. So you are to be praised for the work or for the boldness that the challenge that you have taken on to inspire all the other little girls like my daughter to actually go, you know what? There are women that can whiskey too. There are women that can have a brand too. There are women that are making, they're making amazing product. And so you get my vote of confidence. This is perfectly executed, and I wish I was just trying to fluff your ego, but if it was terrible, I wouldn't have this to say. I would just say I appreciate what you're doing, and we'll talk to you next time. But I
Thank
truly
you.
believe this is really good whiskey, and I know the reason why I wanted to have you on the show is I know Sam pretty well, and I know he is very particular about the type of whiskey he brings in his portfolio. I know he make really hard decision when it comes to bringing in, and for him to actually bring you on the market, I knew that there got to be something different. Now I want to talk about design. Why some people are getting a bottle with like a box on it, and some people are just getting regular bottle? What is the difference between those two?
Good question. You can actually see, over that shoulder, you can see
Yeah,
some boxes back there. So we started off always saying we want to offer with and without gift, because there's a lot of gift boxes
yeah,
wasted in the whiskey industry. In bars in particular, they have to, at least in the UK, they have to pay for their cardboard waste to be collected. So
correct.
we're causing them a problem. And a lot of people for a drinking whiskey, not a collecting whiskey, a drinking whiskey, people don't necessarily need a gift box. So we started off offering both, and in the UK we still do. But Sam at Impex was like, I don't think we need a gift box. We're just going to bring it in without. So in the US market, you won't find any of our regular blue gift boxes like you see behind me.
I'm already sad. I love a weird gift box. I know
But I have
it's a
good news for you, which is that our special editions, which are also coming to the US, sorry, you can't see that very well, they have
no,
gift boxes.
I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it. Yeah.
So there will be gift boxes in the US, just
What
not.
is the special edition? I want to hear more about it.
Okay, well, we've got two specials coming to the US actually, but this one is already in the US. This is called Quite Rebels. And it comes out in the US, it's arriving a bit late this year, but normally kind of in autumn time, and it's about celebrating our amazing team. And when you were saying earlier, I was actually thinking, it's not just me that has done this. I've been lucky to be surrounded by amazing people, Gordon being one of them. And this release the release that comes out every year is about celebrating one of our team in the order that they joined the company. So Gordon joined us back in early 2017 when we started distilling. He is and has been our distillery manager ever since. He actually came from Diageo. So his previous job before he joined us was Oban Distillery, which is just down the coast from us. And the idea of these releases is that we design a whiskey around what that person loves. So our blender Matt will sit down with them, taste loads of different whiskies, not Nc'Nean ones, but loads of different ones, and try and get a feel for what they love in a whiskey. And yeah, then recreate that. So we'll often use, for those specials, we'll often use cast finishes because we're only working a couple of years out and it's the easy way to make an impact. And so for Quiet Rebels Gordon, there's a lot of the STR cask. So it's 75% of that STR red wine cask we talked about, 19% sherry. So a much, much, much higher impact of those Oloroso sherry
forward, yeah.
Exactly. And then the last little bit is Reef Salt, which is a French fortified sweet wine. So a Reef Salt finish on those. So it's really like super rich, moorish, and it's still got the distinctive Nc'Nean notes that we've been talking about, but just a different take on them. So
I love that. I love that you celebrate your, the team working for you and things that they're kind of bring their personality with the whiskey. I guess you're still small enough that it's easy to do that. But I'm pretty sure as your tour grows and this interviews and things come out, obviously more people are gonna try to know Nc'Nean, which I hope that you actually end up tired of working because everybody's asking for your whiskey. That's what we wish for. So for the people that are listening and maybe watching right now, as when this comes up on YouTube, I want you to remember Nc'Nean.com. That's all you need to know. Nc'Nean.com. Go on there and you can see what's happening. Other place you can support Nc'Nean, Instagram. They're on Instagram. Instagram is Nc'Nean, and they are also on Facebook. So on Instagram, the website, and on LinkedIn, always you can find Nc'Nean. So make sure you check them out. You give Annabelle a follow and see. I don't know who's your photographer, but they deserve a raise. That's all I'm gonna say there. Fantastic job.
most of it's our in-house team. In fact, Matt, who's our blender, does a lot of our photography and videos as well. He's a very talented man.
Tell Matt, calm down. Okay, you can do it all. You can be okay. You cannot be a do-it-all. Tell him I said the hooks really say he's a show-off. He needs to slow down. You can blend great whiskey and then turn around and take amazing picture as well. But I guess it's all part of creating. So we will forgive him for that offense that he's taken on all of us. But my last two questions before I let you go. The first one is, what is one thing you want the average consumer, especially 60% of my audience is North American. What would you want the average consumer to know, or as they think of going and picking up a bottle of scotch? What would you want the average consumer to know when they want to spend it? Like, I don't know if I want to spend $70 on this. To give a try to make Nc'Nean.
I think
pick it up.
I think the thing, and maybe this is just from my point of view, I think sometimes people can be a bit wary about trying scotch, and I think depends on what you drink. I mean, some people drink loads of scotch and they don't feel wary about it at all. But if you're a bourbon drinker, there's sometimes a bit of maybe reticence to get into scotch, and I would say go for it because there's a massive range. We've tried to create something that's very delicious and sippable, and I believe that your 70 or whatever it is dollars, wherever you are, will be very well spent because it is a very enjoyable, quaffable, as we would say here, dram. but you're at the same time you're supporting a small, independent, super sustainable business, which is always appreciated. Every bottle counts.
Always so much appreciated for people that do not know. Um, Last but not least, we do it here on the show all the time. You have to close the show. You have to give us one advice that does not suck. Everybody like to give advice to everyone, but we want to hear one advice that does not suck. Something that you live by, work by, your guru, a guru in life gave it to you. Something that every time you wake up in the morning, you impart on your kids or anything else.
Okay, I've got very clear idea of the answer to this question.
We need that one thing that if somebody is listening, they say, you know what, Annabelle made my day today by giving me this one advice that does not suck, because there is a lot of sucky advice out there, and we
There
want
is.
one that does not suck. So the floor is yours. Tell us one advice that does not suck.
I hope this doesn't suck. You can be the judge of this, but my advice would be always ask why. Don't assume that just because something's always been done that way, or you seem to see everyone else doing it that way, that it is either the only or the right way to do it. And I think that is something I really live by, and it's been quite fundamental to my approach all through Nc'Nean. For example, in the bottle design that we were talking about, a lot of Scotch bottles look quite similar, and my approach was, well, why can't we design a different looking one? So we went to a different agency and took a different approach and ended up with something different, and I love it.
You know what? It worked even for me. Always ask why.
Yeah,
And why can't he be? You know what? I will even say always be, always be a what is what at what age did those kids start asking why? Is it 3 or 4? You're like,
I
hey,
think
do
it's
this,
young. I
like
think it's
why?
like two.
You know, why? And you're like, because I said so. But why? I remember from this advice, I used to be annoyed by my daughter when she was like 3 or 4. You're like, well, why did you do this? And she's like, because that's why. And you're like, that doesn't even make sense.
It's so true.
Because that's why. And you're like, what? What are you talking about? So honestly, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're doing this. I'm glad we are actually we got a chance to talk.
So am I.
I am so happy we did this. I'm so happy we were able to actually get together. I'm a fan. I'm a fan. It's now my duty to go out there and tell everybody, hey, Nc'Nean, yeah, watch out.
What about
She's out here and she's doing it. I think I'm even gonna keep this. I may not even keep this as a visual. I'm gonna keep it as an audio. So I want people to go listen and start hitting you up and going, hey, we heard you. What is out there? I'm just gonna keep a snippet of the show out there for people to actually see, just maybe a 5 minute of it, and they have to go look for the rest and on the podcast.
amazing?
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for doing this. I know it's late. I
Oh, don't
appreciate you staying up for me and doing this. And if you need anything, make sure you reach out. If there's something new coming on the market, make sure you reach out. And if you ever want to actually come back on a show and tell us about something new that Nc'Nean have, this is your house now.
amazing. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's my pleasure, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.